Hey everybody, it's me, Glenn again, and I just came back from my first Gen Con that I've ever gone to, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about it, what my experience was there for you. Maybe it will illuminate if you've never gone, or maybe it'll change your point of view on if you have been there before. So I went representing one particular publisher, although many of my clients was there, and I don't know if you know this, but I do marketing. So I represent about 12 different publishers at the moment, RPGs, board games, different elements, companies outside of that. But I was here representing that one publisher. I was working the booth. In particular, it was Crafty Games. And I was not only attending on their dime, I was running their booth. I was in charge of the sales. I was in charge of the marketing, making the whole thing happen. Now, let's talk about some of the things I experienced. One, I was told that the crowd size at Gen Con was going to be enormous, and it was packed. I think I read once before that like 90,000 people came through the turnstile. I heard from a few people that this Gen Con had the most people they've ever seen at a Gen Con, which was amazing. Now, as far as conventions that I've been to in general, was it larger? I've worked Comic Con in San Diego and NAMM, the North American Music Merchant Show in Anaheim, and those were both huge. So this was actually kind of like on par. So it really didn't shake me, but it was the biggest board game show I've ever been to. A lot of crowds. It would take you a couple of minutes to get from side to side of the convention center. It was not only the convention center proper, but also had Lucas Oil Field next to it for people to play. I didn't go over there though. All my energy was on the sales floor, and it was taxing. It was taxing in a great way. I would say most shifts I worked were supposed to be 4 hours. I actually stayed from opening to close every single day. And then even after that, I was in meetings, talking shop and all of that. But the crowds, very manageable. So don't let that dissuade you if they ever did. As far as sales for vendors, my particular booth sold out completely. Not only did we sell out, we flew more stuff in and we sold out of that. So that was great. It gave me a little confidence that I knew how to run the booth and build the excitement. But as I talked to my other clients, they also said if it was not a good year, it was their best year ever. I had another client who sold 700, almost 800 copies of one title alone. That's a huge number, okay? A tangent client who we have a shared business meeting flew in 13 pallets of games. Now, if you don't know what pallets are, those are the big ones that come on the wood crates, okay? 13 of those and sold through it. So it really was an amazing year for everybody. Now, what's interesting is even though you can sell that much, it is not uncommon for people at this show to break even or lose money on it, even with those sales numbers. Doing a convention is really, really expensive. Between paying for your booth, which can be thousands of dollars, getting the air flights there if you're doing that, trying to find parking, having the hotel, all the other, expenses surrounding it. If you have to bring more merchandise in, you have to pay for somebody to get it there. If it's a unionized show, you might have to pay $40 just for someone to carry the box to you. So it adds up really fast. So even though a lot of sales were made and people will tell you, hey, we sold out better than ever, doesn't necessarily mean they made money. Sometimes it's worth it because you're trying to build your brand, you're raising awareness, and it is a form of marketing. But there are a lot of people who don't make money at those shows, even with a lot of merch moving. So that's important to remember, okay? Now, I also say in this show, I want to talk about being in the trenches. So I was lucky enough to be in meetings with presidents of companies, VPs, big conglomerations and stuff like that. And there's a lot of work that's done that is not sales at these conventions. You might be getting distribution deals or localization deals where they take your game and they put it in a local language, or just handshaking, trying to make inroads into other pathways. There's entire groups of people who never see the sales floor. They're just in meetings all day. And I kind of fluctuated between those. When I took a break from the booth, I was going to have like dinner with certain people or with, content creators, channels, or big companies who invited me generously, to their meals to get to know people. And that is a very powerful experience, but nothing matches being in the trenches, like being the sales floor. That's really where I get my energy from, because when you're there, you see what connects. You can do all the development, all the marketing you want, but being there and seeing people's reactions, seeing what they instantly connect to, I mean, that's amazing. Now, I wonder if, like, one thing people are really connected to was Crafty has these games and these small boxes. They're very affordable, and the board is magnetic, the box, and it becomes the board of the game. And that was really cool. And all the games have great art. It's like being in a diorama. Sardinia in particular is really cool. Check that out. But they have others like Baton. We had a Can't Stop version at the booth that was imported from Korea. A lot of games are just hits, and you can see what tantalizes people and what stimulates them to come over, the exciting factor. We also did a lot of fun things at our booth, because I did not want the booth to be transactional. I didn't want it to be about you coming and buying money. I want relationships. So, when you came over to me, I had a big prize wheel that you would spin, and you might get a bad joke I wrote or a fortune cookie, or maybe just some candy. Like we had Sardinia is Italy, so we had candies from Italy you might get, Peru, Tabriz, all these kinds of things. It just made it a more fun thing to do, and I felt like maybe in a small way I was giving back. So that was really cool. Being in the trenches is the best market research you could ever do. That's where you're going to pick up on the vibe. Now, it's also a big show, so you're going to discover a lot of things. I will say probably 80 to 90% of the floor I was already aware of. But there were some things that really caught my eye. And this tells you how important visuals and toy factor is, something that's different. There was a game called 12 Rivers they had. It was like an all purple game. It looked like marbles were flowing down. I don't even know what it was about, but I said, I got to learn more about that and buy a copy. And that is great marketing, great way to launch it. They had a huge display. They moved a ton of units. I'm sure about it. The reviews are really good on BGG if you want to read more. So it was a great place to discover. If you're willing to bring money to just blow, especially on the last day. On Sundays, you're kind of like bargain hunting. You can probably pick up games for a little bit cheaper because people don't want to bring stock back with them. That's a great time to take a chance on something. Just make sure you have an extra bag for the show. And that gets to the fact that the product appeal is king. Boy, I'll tell you what, that drew in so many people. Whether your booth looked pro, and this is, you can extrapolate this, apply this to life in general, business in general. Appeal, man, look the part, get people over. When you do your spiel, don't get caught in the weeds of the details. Just get the general picture, let them take it from there, it'll sell itself. So those are some of the takeaways for me. It was a great experience. It's a tiring experience. After I did it, it was a good tired though, but I went on a vacation in Yellowstone. I did some hiking. I didn't look at a game the whole time. Just breathed air, walked around, saw geysers. So it was really cool. Anyway, that was my Gen Con experience. If you went this year, I'd love to hear your thoughts and your experiences there. Maybe you saw me there. Let me know. That'd be great. I got to reconnect with a lot of fun friends. I got to meet people who I've only talked to online, and we recognize each other right away. Sometimes I kept them on the airplane coming and going. I was like, hey, Jessica, there you are. So a lot of good things. All right. So until next time, be well, and I'll talk to you soon.